Carl Sagan, one of the great men of our time, and a notable, it's hard to say this phrase together, but a notable astrophysicist or a notable astronomer. Somebody that was actually doing something, in that field. Science is really, nobody really, to use a bad word, deifies these people at all unless they do something incredible like Einstein. And since he popped up so hard, it's hard to get anybody, to really do anything. But here's one for Carl, because Carl knew something. Carl's a devout Jew. You could look at him and tell, without a question. And the way he spoke, it's amazing. It's like Obama was like a black person doing Carl Sagan. If you think about that, yeah, because he spoke kind of real slowly, and he had these pieces in between. The only difference was is he hung on words that that Obama doesn't, like billions, and he didn't do that so much. But you could see that they went to that same school of talk. But I digress. So he made this movie Contact, and I don't know if you've seen that, or let's even go back. I don't remember if you've ever seen the old Cosmo show. I mean, I grew up watching that up in my front room of my parents' house without any interruptions, just totally absorbed in it, and the thoughts and things that were into your mind whenever you realized how big the universe really was. It was amazing. My brother had a telescope. I remember finding Jupiter for the very first time. I remember finding Saturn and being able to see the rings. It was extremely neat, and a special time in our life. Comet Cahotek came through, and we got to watch it and stuff, but it didn't show up as well, but as we had anticipated. But anyhow, in the movie, he gives a couple of hints, and the movie's called Contact, and they're trying to find God. And well, they're not really trying to find God; they're trying to find extraterrestrials. And what they end up finding is some super extraterrestrial that's apparently like God, because it turns into her father and talks to her directly. So this would be like a God entity situation. And then it's odd, but they tell her this is the way it's done. This is, you have to get to the point of being able to do this, and then this is the way it's done. And, and he kind of gave a hope towards that situation, like something might happen, a extraterrestrial vision might happen that would cause something to show you. And it's a neat movie. It's like the SETI people trying to find a signal out in space, and she finally has one. And it's got Matthew McConaughey. All right. It's got him in there, and it's got a few real important people and some great actors. But one great actor that's in there that shows up, other than, of course, Ellie Arroway herself. And see the name, I don't know if y'all have studied any of the Bible stuff, but Ellie, El, is the god of the Canaanites, and it ends up being secretly who the Hebrews were worshiping under the different name of Yahweh. It's El. And so Ellie Arroway, and the god of the air, Zeus, that was supposed to be an Arroway, Ellie Arroway, kind of comes across as a little odd. But then over and above that, there's a special name that's in here. There's a special name that's actually in here, and it's yeah, I know you don't like to talk about L, do you? That's my dog. So the special name that's in here is actually the name for this man, John Hurt. He played this character, and this character's name was EssarHaddon, if you remember. And EssarHaddon was the funder behind them making that incredible machine that looked like an astrolabe, that when you electrified and you dropped somebody through and boom, they disappeared for just a second, and they got to go through this whole trip she went through to go and meet her father and then come back. And then the big mind thing at the end of it was, did she actually go or not? Because she came back and said she had gone through all this crazy stuff. And of course they said, under our video, you didn't really go anywhere. You just fell right through. So I don't know what you think you did, but we didn't see it. And she's like, I saw it. And so then the movie ends. And of course, it makes you want to say, well, let's see the part two, because part two is where they do it again and they have a verification of the experiment, but we never get to. But his name is EssarHaddon, right? And you remember this movie. I mean, she's floating in space looking at it. She can't believe the look and the beauty of it. And there's this bad guy that blows up the first one. I don't know if you remember this dude. The dude that's all albino-ish or whatever and stuff. And he blows up the first one. And then, she, here she is. She gets to meet her dad, up in space and everything. And she's with Matthew McConaughey for part of the movie. Really gets dolled up there because they actually wanted to make her look like some scientist lady that really never does anything. And she used to just sit out and listen to static. That's why nobody believed her, is because she'd sit out and listen to static for hours and hours at a time and try to find signals out of it. And they said, "You've just gone crazy, lady." And of course, whenever she proved it to everybody, she wasn't. And if you remember the movie, they steal her from being able to do it and everything, and the other guys get killed, and then she gets to do it again because after the first one blows up and they try to have the meeting, he's already built another one in Japan, and he does a special meeting with her over the phone, and he goes, "Want to take a ride?" Y'all remember that? Well, EssarHaddon actually goes back to, we're going to put some stuff together here, but EssarHaddon is he's a king in the Akkadian dynasties, and he's known under EssarHaddon, right? And that actually means Assur has given a brother. And the other god, Assur, Ashur, this is Ashur, right? So this is where you get your Yahweh, your I am Ashur, boom, EssarHaddon. This is what this comes to, Ashur. Aya means I am, Ashur, cover up Edina. I don't know if you're getting that right there. See if I can zoom in on that. There we go. That's pretty good. EssarHaddon in Akkadian would be Ayah. If I put Ayah right here in front of this, I would have Aya, Ashur, Haddon, Addon. Well, where do you get, what does Addon have to do anything? Haddon and Addon. What does that have to do anything? Well, this guy was deified, again, just like the other gods were and everything. And you can pause this and look through it and everything. But he was a great king of Assyria. And he helped rebuild Babylon. And he's the Sidonian king who had risen against the Aryan king, was defeated in 677 BC and beheaded. The town of Sidon was destroyed and rebuilt as EssarHaddon. Well, where's Sidon? Sidon is actually right there above Jerusalem and Bethlehem, but right on the water of the Mediterranean. In fact, the king of Sidon was Poseidon, and that's Neptune. Poseidon, that's me, Neptune. That's where this comes from. He was the god of the sea. What sea? Well, it's not the ocean. It's the sea. So you get a trapped area as the sea, right? There's the Sea of Galilee. So there it is, right there, the Mediterranean Sea. He's the king of that. And so they show you that a share of the plunder went to the royal king, rival of Tyre. Baal also got some, himself an Assyrian puppet, But the Assyrian puppet went to the underkings of Judah, Edom, Moab, Gaza, Esarhaddon, Ekron, Byblos, Arvad. He owned all these places. Sorry about that. So at one time, he had done an Alexander the Great kind of thing, or a Cyrus the Great, but this is preemptive to that. Okay? You see that? And this is where you get that name from. And then you could tell that whenever he takes over somebody, Ashur, right? And so that's where that name comes from, because you find that it is connected with Haddon is Haddon, and Haddon, that's here, is associated with Lord. Okay, so let's look at this real quick. And look at Lord Wikipedia. See, it's got to have it on here. Yeah. Lord is an appellation, ruler, deity, authority, and everything. So what's weird about this, now I don't know if you know it, but every time that it says Lord in your Bible, in the old Hebrew it says Baal. And they try to make recompense for that and say that, well, in the whole area of the Levant, his name, Baal ran the whole area, and they called him Lord, and so that's kind of where the name come from. So even though you're not talking about Lord, you're talking about Lord. And I go, if I was under Hitler, okay, because they don't like Baal and they don't like the Canaanites and shit, right, supposedly. So if I was under Hitler, and then later that, and Hitler was the chancellor of so-and-so, and then I got another group, and he was called the chancellor, I would not start throwing my hand up and Heil Hitler. We'd find another damn dame for sure, another one for sure. So you wouldn't continue to do Baal. Just like the Canaanite god El, you wouldn't continue to have names with El in them, like Temp El and Angel, like Gabriel, Michael. You wouldn't have that if you weren't still worshiping that god. It would be foolish to have it in there. You wouldn't have the name of your whole people named Israel in there, because El is the god of the Canaanites and not actually somebody that's different. So whenever they say he's Yahweh now, and at first he has Yahweh in his Asherah, believe it or not, he's got a wife. I'll show you that too in a minute. You didn't know Yahweh had a wife and a kid? Well, he used to, but then he disowned him. Doesn't it sound disgusting for a God to do something like that? Well, he said he was so jealous of them trying to give gifts to them that he blew them all off. Doesn't that sound like somebody you want to worship? Somebody who's just like, you're gonna leave your wife and kids and shit. That's great. Yeah, that's actually what happened here, though. But you can pause this and look at this. But this is really, the word Lord comes from down in the feudal system. And so the feudal system, I mean, you think that something's bad, but this is actually slavery of white people right here. And it never ends. And the problem with it is you have no opportunity to advance. This is where the English names come from, and the area that their names come from is because whenever you're a barber and your dad was a barber, you're going to be a barber, and your kids are going to be barbers, and you're never going to be anything but a barber. And a miller's a miller, and a barber's a barber. Right? That's it. A smith is a smith. And, well, what if the smith grows up and he wants to be something else, like in the Monty Python movie, where I don't want to be a prince. I want to, what if he wants to do something? No, there's a serf system here, and it keeps you locked in, so you're never going to get anywhere. You're born into shit. You're born into something. And that gets that born into sin idea in the Bible into you, where you're supposed to say, okay, I was just born like, no. That's why America was built without the Bible being involved. It's gotten sweltered in America badly. We don't worship like we're supposed to and everything, but it's gotten sweltered in here, badly in America. But we made it without because we didn't want that type, because it starts to make bad things happen. I think now we worship pretty good. Everybody's all cool, but there's entities out there. There's new black Hebrew Israelites that are out there that are coming out. And they're saying it's their Bible. It was all about them, and they're going to rise up and do all this stuff. And you can see how this book can cause a problem. And we all know it's fake now. I don't know if you've seen my other videos. This is just going into the substantialness of it. For years now, we've known it's fake. So, and for about 22 years now, we've known it's fake. And then about, we really could just totally prove it to where anybody you show this to can't deny it for about 16 or so. And, but it's really been kind of held back because I guess people are scared of like hurting people's feelings. And, I am too. But I feel like it's better to be honest. I have 3 children. We finally told them about Santa Claus and stuff, and I feel like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I study this stuff for a living. It's what I do, and so I feel like I have to tell them a weight's lifted off my shoulders. Now, I really don't want them to quit believing in heaven and goodness and things like that. That's all still part of it and everything, but the truth of whether the Bible's really about things or not, and it's really written by the Greeks. But and I can show that to you in other videos. But if you're watching now and you haven't caught any of the other parts, but it all comes from Scottish and Old English words. Lord all comes from there. So when they write it in the Bible and they say it means Lord, it all comes from this. The word Lord wasn't around before that at all. So it's an Anglo-Saxon term. And you have other people back before, and it says it means Lord because it's like a chieftain, right? It's like a chieftain or an overseer. And the word comes from Haford, right? And it's supposed to be an appellation, and it's a loaf ward or a bread keeper because he was the guy that got to keep it, bring home the bread. And so, that's why in America, I'm bringing home the bread. And that's why here in America, we act like we're the kings and we're the lord of our own castle. And of course, our throne is our toilet and stuff. We make jokes out of. It's a whole thing that we've had ever since we left England and got to be our own kings. We were breaking our own bread, doing our own thing. And you didn't have to beg nobody anymore. And you didn't have to stay stuck in a serf system. You could have a parent that was a barber and end up being the president of the United States. I don't know what Obama's parents did. I forget now and everything, but they weren't the president of the United States. They weren't in politics, and they weren't even wide up there. But look what you can do. See how you can do anything you want to do. It's amazing. Who was it? Truman had a dirt floor in his house. Just to be honest with you, my parents, whenever my dad was a little kid, they had a dirt floor. Then they got a wood floor, and they told me stories about everything when he was a little kid. So people back through the Depression, it was bad. It was real bad. But, you eventually overcome. And you get over it. You get over all the dark ages that happened to us. You want to talk about something bad happening to a people. Slavery was bad. It really was. And so was white slavery. And there was a lot of it. You need to look into it if you think that there was only black slavery and white people were like giggling, eating popcorn. Because it wasn't going on. And white people were all kings. No, one guy was a king. Just like in Africa. One guy was a king, and 300,000 people weren't, and they were all serfs. Well, what serfs? Basically slaves. Yeah, and if you weren't that, you were captured other people from other places that you captured. What are those people called? Slaves. It's just, it was going on rampant. White on white, Asian on Asian, any area that had a place was going on. In fact, when we got the Africans first, the Spaniards were the ones that took, well, what do they say, 92% of the slave trade. I don't want to go into my thing on it and show you, but took it over there whenever they went down. It was blacks that were enslaving blacks that they got them from. There were blacks from up near the Levant area that were going down into sub-Saharan Africa and grabbing all those guys that were more primitive and capturing and bringing them up and stuff. So, anyhow, lords here, it shouldn't even be in the Bible. It's an old English term. It's an old English term, so it's like lord to lady and thee thou, thee thou, and that's another thing I get pissed off about the Bible. Everybody gets on to the King James. They're like, thou shalt not. You think God never said thou shalt? He never spoke in Old English. If he ever spoke in Old English to Moses and all those people, they wouldn't understand a damn word he said. He spoke in an ancient language, not even Hebrew. Hebrew wasn't even invented till much, much later. They know for a fact now. Hebrew was, so what did they speak to him in? Egyptian or some Canaanite dialect? The first dialect they have is Phoenician. They say you go far enough back and Phoenician and Canaanite are the exact same language. So lords, there's more to this too. What was I going to show you about this too? Lords. There was something about this. EssarHaddon, Lord, Wikipedia, Contact movie. Is that it? I had it, Lord. Listed Kings, Lord of Lords. Well, when you get that Lord of Lords idea, it's weird, but okay. So Lord of Lords, it never would mean a god. It would actually mean that this area has a bunch of overseers, and this is the main overseer. It doesn't put a deity in this situation. It's not really written or stacked that way, if you will. You follow me, hopefully you do. It's really written in Lord of Lords, like King of Kings. That's the same thing. It's the same thing. So king, you'd have to say God of Kings. You follow me? God of Kings is deity over king. King of Kings is just a king over a king, and it's a human entity. And when they talk about this, that's a human entity. Well, Jesus they refer to as a king because he became a human entity on earth. So they talk about that, but they wouldn't talk about the other God as being a king. Well, they do talk about him being king over everything. They talk about him being bull. They talk about a bunch of different things. But, so EssarHaddon and Addon and Lord. Oh, I was going to show you that. Yeah, Lord Addon. It's on here somewhere. Where is it? Where it shows you Addon is the name of Lord. That's the one that I was talking. I just got to yapping. I'm sure if y'all read this while I was looking at it, you've already found it. Overlords, siege lords, appellations, surnames. It's where you get sir and sire from. It's where you get, where was it? Down here, wasn't it? House of Lords. It's where you get House of Lords, you know, the justice system they have through there. I don't know where it's at. But anyhow, so basically they just say Addon means Lord too. So, maybe it's here? Ah, here we go. Baal. Baal is Lord, used by the Canaanites both as a generic term and both local deities as spoken name for the Lord storm god Baal Haddon. Once the form Hadad became so sacred for any but as his high priest to utter. If you were to say the name, you'd get in trouble and everything for it. It's like kids cussing out loud or something. What are you doing, right? Doesn't that sound funny? Doesn't that sound like what they picked up for Yahweh? Oh, you can't say it. So we're going to call him Adonis. You're going to call him Addon and call that my Lord. Addon means my Lord. And then whenever you say Adonis, Adonis is actually a Greek god. And you find out that that Greek god is built on that same Levant area down there. And they have Adonis. They didn't absorb just their gods, they absorbed all of them around. Kronos, Saturn, was the Phoenician, right? And so when they have Adonai, La Adonai, they put in the Bible rather than Lord, it means whenever they were under Addon, as opposed to the other guys. You know, in means Lord in Sumerian and so on. But yeah, so there you go. And you know, there's all these things I can look up, Lord, treasure, church, but all these Lord words come from this time. They come from a medieval time that does not come from there. But out of that and the Saturn stir worship, you get Mr. You get Mr. as being the master of the house, stir. Saturn, in the Chaldeans, he was known as Stir. They didn't have the A in between there, so it wasn't Satur. It's the reason we have Saturday. The Hebrews used to worship on Saturday. It's a Saturn, Satyr. The creature of the Satyr was the half-goat guy with the horns that we think of as the devil. Boy, doesn't that seem weird when you find that part of it out. Mrs. is actually Misters, right? Missus is a mistress, right? Anyhow, there's an attachment there for lords, and whenever it has Lord in the Bible, it says Baal in the old ancient Hebrew. And so that tells you whenever they're under Baal worship. In fact, I don't know if I can find it real quick. Let me see. Oh, let's just do this and go back to... What is it? Hosea 36, was it? 34? I'm not going to be able to find it real quick, and it's going to make me ruin the end of this. Oh, it didn't even put the ho in there. Hosea. Not Saya. Not C. Hosea. No, it's like in Hosea 34. Anyhow, in that key, in that one right there, I've got a one on it. It says Baal is Yahweh, Hosea, and the number on it. Well, hell, let me go here. I'll find my own video. And then I'll just tell you to watch it next. And you find it. Oh, controller batteries are going low. So... Yahweh's Baal, Hosea. There it is right here. Hosea 2:16. I'm sorry. Hosea 2:16. There you go. See, look, even these brothers are finding out Yahweh's a pagan god, Baal. Yep. They're finding out Yahweh's that. You know what? If you want to see something cool, check this out. Look this up right here. Look up Yale Exodus, and you'll see her right here doing this and telling you about this. It's 25 minutes or so. But if you'll go about the middle of the video and start watching from there, she'll start telling you where it all comes from. But you may want to watch the whole thing. It's amazing. And this is a scholar. She's just not going to put it all together for you. She's going to lay out a puzzle in front of you. It's amazing. In fact, let me see if I can. Here we go.
A memory of a time when Israel worshipped the Canaanite god El. P and E wish to claim that the God who covenanted with the patriarchs is the God of the Exodus, but now with a new name. God is 6 times called El Shaddai. Other names are El Elyon, El Olam, El Roi, El Bethel. You can see the translations of these. The everlasting God, God Most High, a God of seeing, the God of the house of God, and so on. El is the name of the chief god in the Canaanite pantheon. It's an important set of texts that were discovered at a place called Ras Shamra. Ras Shamra was ancient Ugarit. In 1928, a peasant in Syria discovered a tomb at Ras Shamra, which was subsequently excavated by the French, and it was found to contain a library of tablets that were written in a language very, very close to Biblical Hebrew. It's clear that Hebrew is simply a Canaanite dialect. In fact, I remember reading one scholar said, if you go back far enough, you're really hard-pressed to tell the difference between Canaanite and Hebrew. And in these texts, we read of the exploits of the gods of Canaanite religion. These gods include the sky god El, I've listed here, the father of the various gods and humans. El has a wife, Asherah, she's listed 3rd on your paper, a mother goddess, their daughter Anat, who is a goddess of love and war, she's quite fierce, and then their son Baal, who is a storm god. He's depicted in mythological literature as defeating both the chaotic sea god, the sea god Yam, and the god of death, Mot. There are striking resemblances between the biblical God of the patriarchs and the Canaanite god El. El is the head of the council of gods. He is said to have a long white beard. He dwells on a mountain top in a tent. His epithets include father of all creatures, bull, king. He's also described as the protector of patriarchs, patriarchal figures, a god of the father of the clan, it says in the text. He guides them, he protects them, he promises them descendants.
One other thing too, his council, the council of El, it's known as the Elohim. Does that sound familiar?
Many biblical passages depict God exactly this way, as the head of a council of divine beings. He's occasionally described with some of the epithets that are associated with El. He's referred to as the father of all creatures. There are poetic passages in which he is referred to as bull, also certainly as king. And in the patriarchal narratives, God refers to himself as the God of the Father. I am the God of the Father, the same way El is referred to. He guides and protects the patriarchs. He makes promises of progeny to Abraham and his heirs. He also is associated with a mountaintop, Sinai, and gives instructions for the building of a tabernacle, a tent-like structure in which he will dwell. Many personal and place names in the patriarchal narratives are compounds in which one element is El. Yisrael, Yishmael, Beth El. El is the God of the patriarchs.
El is the God of the patriarchs of the Bible. Yeah. So anyhow, EssarHaddon, and it leads you through a deal. And it's quite possible Carl Sagan had this the whole time, and he wanted to throw that in his movie, to where if people got that and wanted to make contact with reality, how to run that little gambit in there. And I haven't looked through the movie to see if there's little other telltale signs, but there might be. But I know EssarHaddon, whenever I've studied ancient peoples and stuff, and I knew who that ancient king was, who it wasn't EssarHaddon like his name was Stevie Ray Haddon. No, no, no. It's EssarHaddon. It's one long word, but as soon as people say it, it's the same word. Appreciate y'all. Sub me. Like if you like. Appreciate you.